Hello, my name is Chirino-Klevans, and today I will be sharing with you three different strategies that we use when we are creating content for education. So let's start. Not long ago, I had a conversation with my son, and we were talking about public phones. And my son is 16 years old, and he really had not been exposed to public phones. So it seems like there are things that we grew up with, and that for us they are familiar, but these things are not actually relevant for people nowadays. So if you are about my age, you probably know what this is, and you know how you can use the pen on the cassette. So all of us bring our own strategies to the workplace or to education. The fact is that things have evolved, and they have evolved as well in education. So today I wanted to share with you three different strategies that we use when we are creating content so that learning can be more meaningful. So the first question that I have for you is just, I would like for you to reflect on, why did you enroll in this program? Why do you enroll in this class? Perhaps it's a required course, perhaps it was something that you wanted to know about, but there is a reason behind why you are here watching this video. So perhaps this is an opportunity for you to start a new career. Perhaps you want to start teaching, or perhaps you are already teaching and want to get more ideas. Regardless of the reason why you are here, the strategies and techniques that we're going to be sharing can be used not only in education, but also they can be used in presenting in meetings, conferences, or preparing documents for bigger audiences. So let me ask you, if you remember, where did the most meaningful learning experience happen to you? Perhaps they were in a formal classroom, at school when you were growing up, or maybe those experiences happen when you were part of a team, competing, losing, getting up, or perhaps those learning experiences that are meaningful to you happen when you were part of a group that was important to you, or you got most of your learning from situations that were challenging and that required that you put into practice different skills and unique skills that you did not know that you had before. So regardless of how you got your best learning, there are strategies that can be put into place into any type of learning. I want to share with you three of those today. The first one is chunking, then connecting, and motivating. So let's start with the first one. Chunking has to do with organizing information, how we put pieces together so that people can better understand the content that we want to teach. If you ever are interested in cooking or in baking, you could probably get ideas from looking at different kinds of pastries just to get an idea, but you cannot learn how to cook just from looking at different kinds of pastries. You would have to look and choose one specific kind of pastry, see what it is made out of, dissect the ingredients, learn how to put them together, and then you would learn how to cook. This is the principle of chunking. When we're using chunking to teach, we take content from the most simplest form. So we take information from what is most simple to the most complex. That requires that we break up information into little pieces, that we provide students just with enough information, and then provide examples. So let's say that you want to teach theories of leadership. You are teaching an MBA program and you want to teach leadership. So you start from the most simple context and content, which is, what are the elements of leadership. There are 5 different elements of situational leadership. I broke the information in pieces, and then I give you specific examples of one of the different elements of situational leadership. In this case, let's say that I want to give you examples of how to guide new employees who are highly skilled. That is a very specific situation where we can use one of the elements of situational leadership, which is mentoring. So I broke up the information into pieces, started with a very simple example, and then asked for students to repeat this information and put it into practice. So this is an example of chunking. Now, the second strategy is connecting. So what does connecting mean? Connecting means that you put information in a context that makes sense to your students. I do most of my consulting in China, and the last time I was in China, I had one day off, so I went to the mall, and I remember going to a place that had it was a store that sold bubble tea. So if you've ever been to China, you will know that bubble tea is very popular. But to me, it was very strange, very unique that this particular bubble tea store had this many kids or this many people lined up. So I got closer to the counter and I tried to see what the bubble tea was all about. And I didn't see anything particularly special about the bubble tea, just maybe the bubbles were different colors, which I had not seen before. So I, as a social scientist that I am, I started to ask some of the people who were in line, and I asked them, so why are you lined up here? What is so special about this tea? And first of all, in my broken Chinese and little that I could understand, I did not get a lot of information. But when I asked some more people, they were saying, well, everybody's here. So it was not necessarily that they really understood that there was anything particular about that tea, but they were lining up because everybody was doing it. So when we are teaching, we don't want this to happen. We don't want students just to show up because they have to show up or because they are assigned to that course and they don't have any other choice. We want to be able to create content that really connects with some knowledge and something that could be relevant to their own personal experiences or to their own jobs or activities. So in order to do that, if we are using connecting in an intentional way, we are going to first identify what is the previous learning that your students are having, how they get into the classroom, with what kind of learning they get in. Then identify what is relevant for your audience. In my case, I have many students who are MBA students or they are doctoral students. They come from different fields. I've had physicians, I've had mathematicians, I have had accountants. So I need to find out a little more about what interests to them so that I can create content and I can create assignments that are relevant for them, for their profession, for their expertise, for their own fields. And then we create study teams. So if you notice, when we're using connecting in an intentional way, it implies that we have to know our students. It also implies that you have to know more about your students, not only what they do, where they work, or what is their major, but we need to know a little more about what is relevant for them in their workplace. What kind of information is going to help them be successful? How you can tailor your own content so that you can add to the number of skills that he or she needs to use to be successful in the workplace. And if we really look enough and ask enough, we will find ways to connect the knowledge and the teaching that we're using to each one of our students. Now, of course, in classrooms where you have 40, 50 students, that I know that is the reality for some of you, you may not be able to tailor all the content to all specific students. But just having the opportunity of finding out more about your students and try to tailor the content in a way that you reach most of your audience is going to make learning more significative. And here is an example. Let's say that you are something simple. You want to teach Photoshop, which is a technique to edit photographs. So before you start the class, you ask your students what is their learning, how much they know about Photoshop. Some students may know nothing about Photoshop. Maybe some students know already something. So find out where your students are so that you know how much content you have to include to introduce students or just to get them going with the knowledge that they already bring to the classroom. So identify, perhaps you can use a baseline quiz, perhaps you can use the class to ask general questions and identify how much people already know, and then identify how to use Photoshop for their own fields of expertise. So if you have people who are physicians and they want to use Photoshop, how are you going to use this technique in your practice? If I've also had professional athletes in my class, how are you going to use Photoshop for perhaps something that you want to write? How do you want to use Photoshop if you are an accountant? How can you use it in your own field of expertise? And then when you have created these assignments that are relevant to your audience, you can then start creating teams or groups where each individual participant can not only benefit from their own learning, but also from how different people from different areas are using that same content in a different area. So that fosters creativity, and that keeps learning being enhancing and creative because you don't focus only on your own field. Now, let me talk about the last piece that has to do with motivation. And so I want you to think of the reason why you want to teach, if you want to teach. So if you want to teach, what topics are you interested in teaching? Sometimes we have a hard time just nailing down what we want to teach, one class over the other. So think about the topics that you want to teach. If you have a hard time thinking about a topic, think of what is your area of expertise that you think can benefit most other people because you're already an expert in that field. Which field do you feel more confident? Or think about, what are you passionate about? In my case, I started to be very interested in online learning and integrating technology in education, and I did actually my dissertation on learning styles and the perception of satisfaction on online assisted instruction. And to me, that's a passion that I have, and I have tried to leverage on this passion and try to focus my teaching, and not only my teaching, my profession, into using ways to integrate technology into learning. So think about what really you are passionate about, what things you think you can share with others. And then when you have come up with any ideas, then you can be more motivating into teaching, and at the same time, you will help your students be more engaged. Now, I want you to think for a moment, do you know what percentage of people are really engaged in what they do at work? So when we look at the strategies, unfortunately, about 70% of people do not feel engaged or do not feel motivated by the things they do at work. And if we stop to think about this is a pretty big number. So we if you are a manager or if you are a teacher, you are tasked with the responsibility of how can you create, if you are a manager, how can you create a work environment that is going to help your people be more motivated. And in my case, or in our case as instructors, we need to think, what can we do so that we can have students that are more engaged into what they are doing? And there are fortunately many different strategies that we can use to help students being engaged. So today I will be just discussing some of those. And the important piece of this is that when we are very intentional at creating learning environments that are engaging, the likelihood of students increasing engagement grows exponentially. So here are some examples of how we can create learning environments that are engaging. So the first one is try to identify and show your students how others have benefited from the learning that you're sharing with them. Bring specific examples. Sometimes it is very useful to bring a video or to bring an interview with someone that has already had that learning or that skill and how that skill has helped him or her. Then try to find out how this new learning that you're teaching your audience, that you're bringing to your audience, is going to benefit them. You can do this by formal questionnaires, or you can do brainstorming, or it could be actually a formal assignment. The important piece is that you create that awareness in you and in your student on how that learning is going to be benefiting them. Getting this information is also going to help you as an instructor, because then you're going to be able to create your content and your examples around what is relevant for your students. And finally, think of how can your students can they put into practice what it has been learned in your class. So once you have identified all this, then you can create content that is a lot more engaging. Here is an example. Videos of successful alumni. Let's say that you're teaching leadership skills. You bring videos of alumni that have used these skills successfully and how that knowledge has helped them climb the corporate ladder or solve problems or work with conflict or motivating teams. Then find out with a survey, what is the benefits of motivation in your own course? What is the benefit of learning this content in this specific situation? And then identify assignments where they can use this specific information into solving a problem in their own fields. So these are just 3 different strategies. Let's see how they look together when we put all this together. So I'm going to be sharing with you what I discussed today using a visual aid. I'm going to be clustering criteria. I'm going to use visually organized information. I am going to also find a way to introduce you to show you how I introduce you to new information and how we can use analogies, metaphors, and comparison to make content more engaging. So today we were talking about different strategies for enhancing learning. So some strategies could be using memory aids. So what is a memory aid? A memory aid is something that helps you remember. So this graph right here is a memory aid. I am also organizing the information in a visual way. I am using images that are rich, that can create an impact on you. Because this information is organized, you can go back to it and just look at it and try to repeat each one of the concepts to see if you remember them. I have also organized the information under certain criteria. So if you notice at the top is anything that has to do with cognition, memory aids, visual displays of information, image-rich comparison, repetition, that's related to cognition. And that's why that information is related to the brain. Now, I am showing you here some hands, and those hands remind the student that they have to organize this information and help students create an assignment. You as a professor, you need to create an assignment. Get hands on something so that students can put into practice what they have learned. And you can do this by asking students to think of their own problem and how to solve it, or you can include a case and have them solve it. And finally, use advanced organizers. So advanced organizers are these kinds of graphs that I'm using with you, and they help better remember information. So if you notice here, when I put the feet at the bottom, and I'm connecting that the feet with the concept of advanced organizers. So again, I am linking fit with walking and advancing, so that students can make that connection. So this is just an example of how you can use the three different elements of teaching, which are chunking, connecting, and motivation. But I want you to think of this only as the first step into designing effective instruction. You will also have access to more materials throughout this course that are going to help you create content using many other principles. You will see that when you get more involved into teaching, there are a lot of researchers that are doing a lot of work into how to enhance teaching and learning. So I encourage you to put into practice these three elements that we talked about today. And if you have the opportunity of sharing this learning with others, please do, because when we share learning, it is multiplied. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.